Okay, so this is steps 1 through 9 of the Green Apple tutorial. This is where you can find it. Just search Green Apple tutorial and that'll be the first one that pops up. And it looks just like this. What I would recommend is creating kind of a nice layout between Photoshop and being able to see this tutorial at the same time on your screen. So I'm going to just slide this guy over here so I can see it, as well as see what's going on in Photoshop. Okay, so first thing we're going to do, I'm just going to reorganize this space real quick. It says right here, step 1 is to create a new document using these settings below. Okay, so let's do that in Photoshop. You're going to go to File, New. And pay attention to this, make sure that this is set to pixels, 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 inch. So we're doing 100, 800, and 300 for the resolution, and click OK. Background contents are white. That's perfect. You should have a nice square. Step 2, create a new layer. Here's my layers palette. I'm going to create a new layer within this, and we're going to call this Apple. And grab the elliptical marquee tool, which is mixed in with the rectangular marquee tool. And I'm going to draw a circular shape similar to what's on the image on the website. I'm going to center it. And next, grab the gradient tool. The gradient tool is grouped in with the paint bucket tool. If you don't see it, it looks like a rectangular gradient. And you're going to come up here to the top, pick foreground to background color, which is what this is. It says foreground to background color. So I'm going to hit OK. And then pick, set the style to radial. So you'll need to come all the way up to the top. There's several different styles up here. If I hover over, this one says linear. The second one is the radial. So make sure that's selected. And then set the foreground color. You're going to click on that foreground color. It's going to give you codes throughout this whole tutorial. So I'm going to enter that 6-digit code 88CC33, and it's going to choose the correct green. I'm going to hit OK. Background, I'm going to click on this background box, and I'm going to type in 005522, and I'm going to fill the selection as below. So what I'm going to do to fill that is I'm just going to click from the center where it's the lightest to the outside to the darkest. If I go further out, it'll change it a little bit. So get it however you like it, get it similar to the image, and then move on to the next step. So I'm going to do something like that. I think that looks pretty similar. And let's go on to I believe we're on step 3. Apply the inner shadow layer style using these settings. Layer styles, whenever it mentions layer styles, I'm going to move my layer box up. Whenever it mentions layer styles, what you're going to do is the FX at the bottom of this, if I hover over it, says add a layer style. Okay, this is different than the layer blending mode. The layer blending mode is up here. That's what we use for the colorization lab. Layer style is down here at the bottom, and it says apply the inner shadow. So I'm looking for inner shadow, and I'm going to get this box pop up. I'm going to set the blend mode to multiply. It already is. The opacity to 75%. Set the angle to -90 degrees. So I'm looking for -90. Set the distance to 45. So I can just type that in, or you can slide it. And set the size to 80. If it doesn't tell you something specific, just leave it to whatever the default is. I'm going to hit OK, and now it's just set a little shadow on the inside. I can turn that on and off as I choose. So that's just what we were looking at. Step 4, create a new layer. So that's just a new empty layer. Call it texture. Oops, already spelled. Okay, this is something new. Whenever it says command click the Apple layer to load the selection if the selection is not active, that's going to come up a lot throughout this tutorial. What that means is, let's say I've ended for the night and the next day I no longer have my marching ants on my Apple layer. What it wants you to do is it wants you to command click on it says command click on the apple layer. It's a little misleading. I would command click on the layer thumbnail. So I'm going to go hold down the command key, and I'm going to click on the layer thumbnail of the apple. And that's just going to load that selection. The texture layer is still blue. I don't want to see it like this and think that you're on the texture layer. You're not on the texture layer anymore. So whenever it says command click the apple layer or command click whatever layer, it just means in the layer thumbnail. And then it's just loading those pixels from that layer. So just be really careful, read it very carefully when you get to those steps. I'll always tell you when that happens. Use the colors from step 1. So those are still loaded over here. And you're going to go to filter, render, clouds. Okay. The next step is go to filter, distort, spherize, and set the amount to 100% and the mode to normal. All right, I'm going to hit OK. And now you're going to set the layer blending mode to soft light. So that's up here. That's where the overlay and those are all blending modes. It's different than the layer style that we just did for the step previously. So I'm going to set this to soft light. Oh, that looks pretty. So that was just changing and adding some of that texture back into that apple. All right, step 5, we're going to do a few more steps on this video. Create a new layer. We're going to call it dots. And I'm going to go to my brush tool. I'm going to set the master diameter, just means, get the brush tool and set the foreground color to CC DD99. Hit OK. I'm going to set the master diameter to 5. Master diameter just means the size. I'm going to set this to 5 and the hardness to 100%. Okay, so now I've got a little circle brush. I'm going to come down here and then create several dots by placing single clicks all around the apple. So dot, 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 dot. And you can look over here and see how many they have. They have quite a bit. And they're going to do some at size 5, and they're going to make it a little bit smaller and do a bunch more at size 3. So now I'm going to change this to size 3. And I'm going to come and do some more dots all over the place. All right, awesome. All right, command click the apple layer to load the selection. I've already had my selection loaded, but I'm going to do it anyway. Command, hold down the command key, click on the layer thumbnail. Go to filter, blur, motion blur, and set the angle to 90 degrees. For 90, I'm going to hit OK. And the distance to 3 pixels. I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to go to filter, distort, spherize, and set them out to 100. Set the mode to normal, and I'm going to apply it. That's just going to make it look a little bit more rounded than it did. And set the layer blending mode over here. The layer blending mode is this one. And I'm going to set that to overlay. And then I'm going to change the opacity, which is right next to that, to 50%. And then I'm going to hit Command D to deselect. You guys know that one. And let's move on to the next step. Okay. We are going to create a new layer on top and call it Dent. The elliptical marquee tool, which is that same one we've been using. And then this is the one where you're going to want to look at what kind of they have as far as their images are concerned. So we're going to make a selection just like this. I'm going to move it up just a little bit closer to the top. And I'm going to fill it with white, which means I'm going to go to my paint bucket tool. I'm going to change this color to white. And I'm just going to click. Now it's white. And then it says create another layer and name this one Dent Shadow. All right, I'm going to call it dense shadow. I'm going to make another elliptical selection like shown below. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to, oops, I'm going to deselect this. I'm going to make another selection like that. And this one is telling me to fill it with black. So I'm going to just change my foreground color to black. I hit OK, and I'm going to fill this guy with my paint bucket tool, fill him with black on the dense shadow layer. And now go to the I'm sorry, I was right here. Fill it with black. Alt click on the line between dense shadow and dent. So I'm going to Alt, hold on the Alt key, and click so you can see my little cursor changes here on my layers palette. I'm going to click this, and then I'm going to press Command D. So you can see how part of it went behind the front layer because it became a mask for it. Where am I? Now go to the dent layer in the layers palette and set the blending mode, which is up here, to multiply. Okay. Go back to the dense shadow layer and apply a Gaussian blur filter with a radius of 17 pixels. So you're going to go filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and set this to 17. I'm going to hit OK. So you can see how I kind of blurred it. Now, you can see the top layer of my dent layer. You can see the top edge of that. I don't want to see the top edge of that. I don't want to see that defined line. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. I'm going to try 14 pixels. I'm going to go one more down. I'm going to go 12. And I think that looks pretty good. You can't see the top edge of that. So that I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to set that layer opacity to 75%. Okay. All right, that's enough for today.